I'd like to welcome you all. This is a very select group, and a very warm welcome to you all to our first Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research Open Day. My name is Peter Leedman. I'm the director of the Harry Perkins Institute, and it's a great pleasure to welcome who I think will be the very first crew of a large number of people coming through today. Before I start, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of this land on which we're meeting, the Noongar people. Now, I was saying a few minutes ago, I feel like someone's selling a house. This is a very, very big home open. This is a $121 million facility, and it is a spectacular place to work. And I've got the pleasure of introducing you to who we are and what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and of course, where we do it. And where we do it is in this magnificent building. And I thank you all for coming, and it's going to be fine for the rest of the day and for the rest of the weekend, and for when the Eagles beat the Bullies tomorrow. Now, this doesn't happen today. There's a very large amount of organisation for this, and it doesn't happen without a lot of work. And I'm just going to thank, and none of them are in the room, I don't think. Some of them are, but there's Kathy Davin, Pauline Charman, Carolyn Monahan, Jess Vullen, and Alicia Murray-Jones, and of course Meredith Eddington. And all of them are not in this room, but they'll know they've been acknowledged. The first speaker gets the chance to do that, and I'll do it again at the end of the day as well. So, this is a picture of just some of the Perkins. And you might recognise some of them. I'm not quite sure whether any of you have been. I can see some members of my own laboratory there. And we do wear white coats. We wear white coats because we have to in the laboratory. But this is a group that likes to party, it likes to dance, it likes to do all sorts of normal things. And so although the persona is one of high intelligence and white coats, the reality is this is a group of people with multiple skills, both inside the lab and outside the lab, and there's a huge amount of fun had within this organisation. We've got some really core fundamental values. Respect, obvious, but it does need to be said, and it's number one for good reason. This is a building of innovators, people who love to think of new ways of doing things, thinking outside the box, and getting excited by that. There's plenty of passion. There's passion plus in this building by the people who will work tirelessly 7 days a week to achieve their goals. And of course, it's about collaboration. Nothing is achieved in medicine and medical research without teams both locally inside the Institute, locally inside Perth, nationally and internationally. And I must admit, excellence for us is just part of our makeup. It's part of our DNA. We aspire for it, or we aspire to it, and it's part of every part of the researchers in this place. I love it. So why do we do it? Well, there's some bad news and there's some good news. And I'm not sure whether you'd like to hear bad news first or good news first, but I'm going to give you the bad news. And the bad news is 1 in 2 of you in this room are going to get cancer. Heart disease is still the leading cause of death in men and women. And in fact, many more women die of heart disease than breast cancer, even though the community would think otherwise. How about this? In Australia, 1 person every 12 minutes dies from heart disease. And that's a staggering figure. Diabetes is the fastest growing chronic condition. Every 5 minutes, someone in Australia is diagnosed with diabetes. That's an absolute tsunami of people. Alzheimer's disease affects at least 1 in 10 of us when we are greater than 65. I mean, that's incredibly bad news. But what I want to tell you in the next 2 slides is incredibly good news. And medical research is having dramatic impact on all of those diseases. So what's happened in the last 30 years? So breast cancer survival has doubled in 30 years. Doubled. It's remarkable. Fantastic. What about the cervical cancer vaccine? Ian Fraser in Queensland that vaccine is 100% successful. So if we vaccinate the entire world, which we are trying to, that disease will be eradicated in the next 50 years. New targeted therapies for cancer, such as leukemia and melanoma, are changing the face of those diseases as a consequence of high-quality, targeted medical research. And survival for all cancers is predicted to go up, I should say, by 2030, i.e., that's a huge outcome for the globe. Everyone's going to be dying of other things, such as heart disease and diabetes, as I've just said to you, but this is a major set of good news. In the last 10 years, and you're going to hear from Peter Thompson, who's sitting in this room later on today, heart disease survival has improved very substantially. That still doesn't mean people aren't dying, but the survival's gone up as a consequence of great medical research. And this is, of course, a wonderful one. It's very relevant. Robin Warren and Barry Marshall got a Nobel Prize in 2005 because they went against the grain of everyone and said that stomach ulcers were due to an infection and not acid. And that's right here, right in Perth. Fantastic discovery. What about the bionic ear? An Australian discovery that's changed the world of those who are profoundly deaf. And I think of this a lot. I've had operations on my knees. Just think of what keyhole surgery has done for medicine. It doesn't matter whether it's for your thyroid, for your appendix, for your gallbladder, or for your knees. Keyhole surgery has dramatically changed the face of medicine in that context. And I don't know whether any of you read the Weekend Australian last week, but there was a fantastic article on 3D printing. And there's a surgeon over east who was putting a 3D printed new part of the spine into a woman who had complete and utter pain relief. Now that may be not every single patient, but the context of 3D printing and the fusion of biomedicine with bioengineering is a really exciting area and one that we're going to get into. So plenty of good news. And what's the model? The model is that the best healthcare, and we want the best healthcare in this town, is based on a strong foundation of a vibrant, integrated, high-quality medical research sector. And that's what this building brings. We're on the Sir Charles Gardner campus. We communicate very closely. There's a wonderful liaison between medical doctors and scientists, and that's the foundation for fantastic medical research. So think back to the 20th century and contrast it with the 21st century. And I just want to take you through just a couple of things on this slide. We've typically, as doctors, treated patients when symptoms arrive. The 21st century is going to be about prevention, intervening, knowing your risk profile before symptoms occur. Similarly, we've had a relatively vestigial and not particularly well understood view of medicine and health and the consequences of disease in the 20th century. We're going to develop a much deeper understanding of the biology of disease and therefore be able to prevent it and detect patients at risk much more effectively. And lastly, it's an expensive business. If you look at the predictions for what it's going to cost for medicine by 2050, it's a huge amount of money. It's hoped that with the deeper understanding of all of what I've just said, we're going to get more effective and cheaper medicines. If the cost of medicines keeps going up at the current rate, it's unaffordable for this country by 2030/2050. Now, there's a lot said about genomic medicine, and some of you may have seen this slide, but the guy on the left, who's somewhat large, says, "I'm worried that healthcare has become too impersonal, doc." And the doctor says, "Nonsense, just relax and lie back on the barcode scanner." Now, so the reality here is that we all have a genomic signature. And that genomic signature is going to become available relatively soon. We're going to have access to that over the next 5 to 10 years. And that's going to tell us a lot about who we are and what diseases we're at risk for getting. And there are going to be sophisticated advances in medicine that will allow that DNA signature to foster better outcomes and more precision in everything that we do. So remember this, because it maybe is not that far away. My barcode, read it, doc, tell me what I'm at risk for, tell me which drugs I need to take, which preventive strategies, which exercise regimen, which food I should eat, so that I'll live a long and productive life. And I do like this one because there are maps of movie stars' homes. We're in a lovely big home today. And the maps of the human genome are going to be readily available. Some of you might already have had your genome sequenced. We're not too sure what a lot of the information means at the moment, but the maps of the genome are going to be part and parcel as we go forward over the next 15 to 20 years. And I'd draw your attention to this. This is from 2001. The human genome wasn't actually solved at that stage. So this was a pretty forward-looking cartoonist. So the Perkins is about this notion of translational research and moving the bench towards the bedside. Here's the bench on this side over here, and you'll have an opportunity later on today to go through our labs, and they're fantastic. And we want to move our discoveries over here towards the bedside. But you'll see the arrow here is really important. It's actually about communication between doctors and scientists. And I'll let you know that in the Institute, for our 3 divisions, we have a doctor who co-heads the division with a scientist, and that we think will be absolutely essential for fertile productivity between the bench and the bedside. So this is a slide that for all the men in the room will be familiar. Some of you will know other men in the room who've had prostate cancer, and they'll feel like that. This is a pretty crude blunderbuss approach, the surgical approach, which is incredibly important, the chemotherapy approach, which is fairly blunderbuss. We need more precision. And without that, this is going to stay. This slide will be in your memories for a long time. And I want to show you just 2 slides about the dramatic changes that health and medical research are making in some areas. So this is a patient with what's called metastatic or widespread melanoma. And remember, that's the Australian disease. Unfortunately, we have more melanoma per head of population than any other country in the world. And this is after treatment with one of these new drugs, a targeted drug. And I'll take you through that in a second. It's a dramatic, dramatic change to the landscape. This is another patient. This is now a PET scan showing the virtual abolition of the disease. So this can happen and is happening as a consequence of high-quality medical research. And let me just take you through this slide that shows you one example of bringing precision through medical research to clinical medicine. So this is the group of patients with melanoma. And we really want to give the medicines to the right patients. And the right patients are here in green. And we don't want to give the medicines to those in orange or blue. So there's a brand new test that is available. And we know that if we give the medicine to the patients in blue and orange, it's not going to benefit them. But we can select them now very precisely by doing a genetic test. There's a little chip, a little DNA chip. We can take some DNA from all these patients and work out and start to subcategorize them by doing this BRAF testing. It's actually looking for an abnormality in the genetic code of this particular piece of DNA, and we test very simply, and we get 2 outcomes. We get the outcome of those patients who do not have an abnormality in the BRAF gene, and they shouldn't get the medication, and they don't. And then we get the group who do have an abnormality in the gene for BRAF, and they actually do get the medication. It's literally a decider. It's Sophie's choice with medicines, as it were, if you remember the movie. And that's incredibly important. If you give the drug to these patients, they can get really sick from the drug. These patients have dramatic outcomes. That's bringing precision to everything we do, and that's the power of some aspects of genomic medicine. So I wanted to put this slide in because it gives you a perspective, a really important one, for what that drug is. We've just looked at a brand new drug treating melanoma, and here it is down here. But what you've got to remember, it was discovered about 13 years ago, and it cost about $1.5 billion to go from the original discovery up here down to that drug. And that's really important. The Perkins focuses a lot of work here. We also do work in this part of this pipeline. We are very involved in clinical trials. But discoveries that we make and have made over the last few years, which we are turning into clinical trials and turning into true new medicines, they take a long time, and it's really important for the public to realise it's very difficult to do that. Now, there is an element of medicine that's so-called repurposing of known drugs, so that if you have a medication that's already out in the marketplace being used for one particular indication, if you can find that it can be repurposed, then dramatically this changes. And an example is thalidomide. Thalidomide is the drug that causes all those terrible malformations in young children of pregnant mothers and was blacklisted. It turns out that modifications of thalidomide are incredibly useful in a cancer called multiple myeloma, and they've become a foundation stone for the treatment of multiple myeloma. So the concept of repurposing drugs is an important one. It's burgeoning in medicine and medical research, and we're going to see a lot more drugs that are here being repurposed, going back into clinical trials, and shortening this from 13 years to about 3 or 4. Really cool stuff. So just to remind you why we do it, and it's really, really simple. People just want to make a difference in this organisation to the global community. Okay, so what do we do? What do we do? The Perkins has got a vision. We absolutely aspire to be a world leader in medical research, and we want to deliver global improvements in human health. Big aspiration, and we're doing that already. We just want to do it bigger and better. And it's all about innovation and translation. Two words that I've mentioned already. And if you look at that, innovative research translating into health benefits very much encapsulates what I've just been saying over the last few slides. And really, it's about, for us, discovery, and we definitely want to deliver hope. So our 3 really big goals: new diagnostics, new treatments, and new ways to prevent disease. And this is really important, and stop it before it starts. Just think about a world where we can prevent disease and stop it before it starts. Gee whiz, I'm a physician part of my time, and wouldn't that be fabulous if we had such big preventive strategies, we actually stopped people getting disease. And of course, we can't do this without your involvement, and the community is an incredibly important part of our quest. So as I said earlier on, we've got 3 divisions. We are looking to do bench-to-bedside medical research. We have a cancer and cell biology division. We have a heart disease and diabetes division, and we have molecular medicine and ageing. And what that means is we're applying the latest technologies in molecular biology and technology within the context of various diseases, and we're very focused in this division on ageing as well. Now, this is a busy slide, but you might be thinking about what your favourite disease is, or someone who has cancer or heart disease in your family, or one of these many diseases in the molecular medicine and ageing category. We are fairly focused on a number of diseases. We're not doing everything. You'll notice we're not looking at infectious disease. We're not looking at asthma, for example. There's a number of things we're not looking at. But there are probably some of your favourite diseases for various reasons on this slide. And this is a complex slide, and I'm not going to go into detail, but this is available on the web. And this is going to become a longer-term brand of ours. It's a circular wheel. Around the outside are the skills and expertise inside the Perkins. In the next circle then, we're asking 6 simple but really important community speak questions. And they are the questions that drive the Institute. For example, in cancer, how does cancer form, spread, and develop resistance to treatment? Really big question, and a really important one for what we're interested in inside the Institute. In the context of heart disease, how can we prevent and treat blockage of blood vessels? Fundamental question, and one that drives the Institute. So if you go on the website, you can check out this and have a bit of a think about it, and you'll see it around for the rest of the day as well. All right, how do we do what we do? So we're thinking big. We're going to be very ambitious. We're going to be innovative. We're very passionate. We're working in teams, and we definitely want to change the world. If you think about that, and I mentioned this before, this is a great cartoon about Barry Marshall and Robin Warren. Many of you will know this, and if you don't, it's definitely worth a look on the web. Barry Marshall still works here, and Robin's retired now. But most of you know the story, and for hundreds of years, and I mean hundreds of years, surgeons had said, and clinicians had said, ulcers are due to acid. No acid, no ulcer. When I was a medical student, that was the the mantra, and Robin Warren found these bugs, and everyone ignored them for a long while. And it really took Barry to drink these organisms in this green goo. I'm not sure it was actually green at the time, but he did the most remarkable experiment you could ever imagine. He drank the goo, but he was convinced before he drank it that if he drank it and treated himself with antibiotics, he'd cure himself. He was convinced of that, and he was right, of course. So he drank the stuff, gave himself ulcers. His wife went ballistic and treated himself with antibiotics and cured himself. And that was the proof of principle that the discovery that Robin Warren had made was true. Now, what's interesting, people had seen these bugs and they'd ignored them completely because it was so different from everything else in the world. How could they go up against it? And in fact, the story is really interesting because they met a tsunami of resistance and naysayers. They would stand up at meetings and say, ulcers are due to this organism, and people would laugh them off the stage. And of course, they've had the last laugh. It is fantastic to know that this town can do this sort of innovation and win a Nobel Prize. And that's what drives our over 60 students we have and our over 20 lab heads that we have in the Institute. This is a very exciting place to work, and this is a fabulous driver. So we're obviously pretty obsessed with the DNA, and you're going to hear talks later on today about experts. In fact, Ryan Lister, who's going to follow me, is going to talk about lots of wonderful things about DNA. And just one simple observation, again, turning one theory on its head. We'd thought for a long time that although DNA is 3 billion base pairs long, there's only about 2% of it that makes the genes. And the so-called junk DNA was considered junk until maybe 15 years ago. And of course, the junk contains all sorts of really amazing things that are regulating all sorts of parts of the body, very importantly. And so that focus has turned another concept on its head. So-called junk DNA is really, really important DNA. And this is another issue. It doesn't matter which part of the working environment you're in. Almost everyone is having to deal with big data. And big data, right, thank you. Big data is a major issue for us, as it is for the geo-resource industry, as it is for the square kilometre array astrophysicists, as it is for the marine biologists, as it is for the banking industry. It's a big issue, and we're tackling that and bringing people in who have got skills in big data. And of course, we love technology. This, I don't think, is the true doctor of the future, but it's something, it's maybe a hybrid of this, where we're seeing patients might be done in part by a very well-trained semi-robots. It's a bit scary, but if that's the only thing that's there, then maybe that's better than nothing at all. I do get excited by looking at these sorts of things, and Peter Thompson, who's in the audience, he's going to talk later on. He's a cardiologist. This is one of your arteries, and this is the sheath that people can put in your artery. But what I love about this is that you can put a sheath that's now impregnated with medicines. So not only does the sheath open up the artery, but it gives you medicines that modify the product and the cause of the narrowing of the artery, so-called arteriosclerosis. And this is a fusion between nanotechnologies, biomaterials. It's that lovely fusion between lots of different places and skill sets. So I'm very briefly just going to go through some discoveries that we've made in the last couple of years. So we've identified new ways to target breast cancer cells using advanced gene technologies. We've identified a little tiny bit of that nonsense or junk DNA called a microRNA that stops liver cancer growth in its tracks. We've identified a new way of delivering drugs by opening up the blood vessels in the pancreas to enhance the therapy and effectiveness of treating pancreatic cancer. We've come up with a novel way of identifying those patients at risk, really high risk, of developing type 1 diabetes. Peter Thompson will probably talk about this afternoon, but there's a drug called colchicine which treats people with gout. And it's been around for about 40 years, and it gets back to repurposing. And I was mentioning a bit earlier on, this drug looks like it's going to reduce heart attack incidence by 50%. Just think about that. That's our biggest killer, and this drug might be able to reduce that by 50%. We've identified, and Nigel Lang is going to speak later on today, we've identified multiple genes involved in muscle diseases that you inherit as a child, so-called congenital muscle diseases, and we've translated those into new tests into PathWest. We've found a fabulous way of treating blood pressure in women who have blood pressure in pregnancy, or so-called preeclampsia, and that's a really novel way of looking at these women who have been difficult to treat, and we've opened up a new complete corridor of therapy in that area. And we've used a new technology, this is via Kevin Flegger, to identify a combination of drugs that would never have been thought of to treat kidney disease, and there's now a clinical trial using that. So we've got lots of cool runs on the board, and there's lots of innovation inside the Institute. Here's some of the press that's come out of the Institute. Some of you will have read this. We're publishing lots of papers, of course. So we're very much wanting to get out into the community and tell everyone the good messages. We've got a couple of spin-out companies, true translation of what we're doing. That is, this is the Kevin Flegger discovery, a new drug combination that's being trialled right now in patients with chronic kidney disease. Sun Biomedical was listed on the ASX just recently. And this is a company coming out of my own lab called Miravan, where we're moving a liver cancer therapy towards clinical trials as well. So just to remind you, discovery, moving towards clinical trials, a long process, about 13 years and $1.5 billion. About 5 years ago, the Institute decided that we wanted to get more into this space, and in particular the space of delivering early new drugs to the Western Australian community. And we started a company called Linear, and Linear is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Harry Perkins Institute, and Linear is a fantastic small company situated on the Sir Charles Gardner campus. Now we're here, we're right there, and a short walk away is a brand new ward. It looks like a clinical ward, but you get locked into it, in fact, and you don't come out until you're allowed out because we're doing very sophisticated early phase clinical trials. And in the last 5 years, we've actually done over 100 clinical trials. We've brought new medicines to over 400 patients and 2,000 healthy volunteers in 11 different areas. That means heart disease, anaesthesia, cancer, joint disease. It has been an absolute winner. And the most important thing to note is that we are bringing new treatments to the Western Australian community faster. Simple, very important statement. And of course, we've been winning all sorts of export and industry awards. So how do we do it? Well, the community has a major involvement in what we do. We have a huge ride, over 1,300 riders last year. It's 220 kilometres, so it's not for the faint-hearted, but it's a wonderful ride, many millions of dollars raised. We have a walk to end women's cancers, raised over $1.8 million earlier on this year, so very big involvement of the community in our big events. And we have sponsors, without whom we can't do what we do. So community support is absolutely essential in every part of the organisation, and we're incredibly grateful for those who support us. And the last thing I want to say is, where do we do it? Well, you're in our auditorium, and I'm going to give you a very brief tour before you have a wonderful tour through this place. This is the Charles Gardner campus. We're right here. There's Charlie Gardner. There's the new Children's Hospital. There's Linear. There's the Lion's Eye. Right here is a brand new neuroscience institute that's being built, and the State Cancer Centre. So it's a collaborative environment. We actually have a second facility, and this is the Fiona Stanley Hospital that many of you will recognise, and this is our second building. We've got a $70 million building down there, St John of God Hospital here. So this is a burgeoning campus and will grow very substantially. And this is a lovely view of it, and the main hospital's here, and this is our second building. And of course, this is a view from level 1 of this building, which you'll have an opportunity to go and explore very soon. It's a fabulous space. This is the walk-in. This is the MRIs, biggest MRIs I've ever seen in the world. You've got to go and check these out and review your anatomy. There's a girl and a boy, and a wonderful expose of science that wanders up and down, controlled by an electronic motor, that talks about some of the science higher up in the building. And you'll have an opportunity to go and visit our labs, which are 21st century. It's a fantastic place to work. There is no doubt about that. You get river views. You get a cafe on the ground floor. This is a great place to work, I must admit. There's no doubt, and a beautiful auditorium. It is truly wonderful. And you'll get to meet our scientists, and they're full of enthusiasm, passion, they're driven, and they just, as I said, want to make a difference. And so you've got an opportunity to meet them today and have a lot of fun. Our website's new, our brand's new. We're excited about everything that we do there. There's Pauline Charman and her crew in the Biodiscovery Centre are going to be turning on all sorts of things today, so I do urge you to go and visit there on level 1 as well. And so the rest of the day is yours. Have fun, enjoy it. You can stay in here or come back in here, and you're going to hear all sorts of wonderful talks on heart disease, on genetics, on liver cancer, on muscle disease. It's a tour de force of great quality speakers in here. You can explore our behind-the-scenes tour of 21st century labs on level 7. You can experiment in the Biodiscovery Lab on level 1. You can kill a cancer cell up there if you really feel like killing something, or go and kill a cancer cell. You can enjoy playing the stem cell game on level 1. You can educate yourself by talking to lots of our scientists in the seminar room, and there's posters set up there. Just ask questions, because they are waiting and ready to answer them as best they can. And of course, we've got a cafe which is open and serves fabulous coffee, fabulous food, really, and I say that after having many of them, and they are looking forward to you going in to energise yourselves, to come back out here to have some fun. Now, the ones in red are there for a reason, because you need tickets to go on these. You need tickets to go on the lab tours, you need tickets to do the biodiscovery labs, and you need tickets to do the stem cell game, and they're all in the seminar room just across the way. So that's it from me. Incredibly passionate about what this place is, who we are, and overjoyed that we're open for our first time, and looking forward to having a wonderful day and you enjoying yourself. So have fun and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.